Wrubell from the Bay Area, BYU and Santa Clara. Greg, it's fantastic to have you on this Friday show, and it's amazing to be talking College Cup finally for this BYU women's soccer team.
Yeah, morning, Spencer. Morning, Dave. This is Jennifer Rockwood's 27th season in the game as BYU's head coach. And her illustrious career, which includes so many, resume milestones among the very best in the game for more than a quarter century now. And finally, she gets to coach in her first College Cup. I'm thrilled for her. Of course, very excited for this team that took heartbreak from the spring and turned it into this triumph in the fall and really used what happened in the spring to get to this point. And it's kind of cool that the revenge tour continues, if you will. BYU was knocked out of the NCAA tournament in the spring by Virginia. Well, they beat Virginia to get here. They lost to South Carolina in the NCAA tournament a few seasons back, got knocked out of that. Well, they beat South Carolina to get here. They have Santa Clara, and Santa Clara defeated BYU on October 30th to win a piece of the WCC championship. And now the Cougars get Santa Clara here on the Broncos' home pitch. So Coach Rockwood talks about how these little motivations are actually pretty helpful to see these other teams on the other side of the bracket or down the line in your bracket. And the Cougars have had those kinds of challenges kind of, propel them on here in this NCAA tournament run.
So BYU scored more goals than anybody in the country, but they didn't score any goals against Santa Clara. Got shut out 1-0. Does that make them the underdogs tonight, or do they come in as the high-flying, goal-scoring favorites?
Well, I don't think Jerry Smith, the head coach of Santa Clara, would have been surprised had BYU won that October game, 2 or 3-0 or 2 or 3-1. BYU in the first 15 minutes of that match hit 2 goalposts and a crossbar and was just peppering the net and had nothing to show for it. And soccer's a funny game that way. You can look like and play like the better team. The stats can be in your favor. And yet, if you're not finding the back of the net, especially early, as the Cougars had chances to do, the game can really turn and change. And so I think the Cougars felt good about their performance. I think Jerry himself has conceded. BYU, the Broncos could have, been down 1 or 2-0 early in that match. And then BYU back in the spring in a non-conference game because of COVID scheduling did come to Santa Clara and win a match there. And so the Cougars know what it's like to come on the road here and get a win. That happened to be a non-conference game, but they've done it, and Jen's done it. And the Cougars have gained results here in the past. They have a number of draws to go along with that one win. Now it's about getting the full 3 points tonight. But I think, even back to that day at Santa Clara, BYU felt like they probably earned a better result than they got in that 1-0 defeat.
Greg Wrubell is with us on BYU Sports Nation, previewing BYU and Santa Clara in the College Cup tonight. You outlined beautifully the Vengeance Tour, which I love. I feel like it's almost poetic how it has built up to this, Greg. And this team kind of feels like, I almost hate to say this phrase, the team of destiny with the Vengeance Tour worked in. Is there something to that, or am I just, wearing the blue goggles?
No, I think team on a mission is a pretty fair way to describe what BYU has going right now. You're kind of peaking. You're playing your best soccer at the right time. The goals are pouring in. They're still very stingy defensively. You have 2 All-Americans now playing alongside each other. Michaela Coulihan has done things that almost no other soccer player in BYU history has done. It feels like her time. And Cam Tucker is just a straight sniper right now. Every time she gets a chance, she's finding the back of the net. So those 2 playing together the way they are, Brecken Mozingo has just not necessarily flipped a switch, but as the season has gone along, gotten better and better and better and more confident. I love the lineup Jen Rockwood puts out there right now. And it's kind of interesting that they had, 5 all-region selections just yesterday or 2 days ago. And they come at keeper, on the back line, in the midfield, and up top. Every position on the field, every area on the field is essentially covered for BYU. That's depth of strength, and the Cougars have that right now.
Coulihan's hoping to start and wear that BYU jersey at least 2 more times in this one and in the championship, and then we'll see. But is she the greatest soccer player in the history of BYU?
Well, she's the most decorated right now, and times have changed. Shauna Robach set some records that will never be touched, back in the late 90s. Women's soccer was a different game then than it is now, a quarter century later. And yeah, Michaela got a little more out of her career than most players with the extra year due to COVID. But, the number of conference players of the year, unprecedented. The number of All-America citations, unprecedented. And to be as good in the areas in which she is good is, I think, almost unprecedented at BYU. She is second in goals. She's second in assists career. And she's also a great defensive player. That doesn't get enough attention. Michaela defends as hard as she attacks. And not every coach finds that player on their roster. You can have gifted goal scorers or gifted distributors. But she is someone that cares as much about getting the ball back as she does as getting the ball to the back of the net. That's what makes Michaela really, really special.
Cannot wait to watch Michaela and the Cougars take on Santa Clara tonight. We're talking with Greg Wrubell as he prepares for that call. I want to spin the wheel of BYU sports awesomeness and switch gears a little bit, Greg, with you and talk football specifically. BYU awaits their bowl game scenario, whatever it might be. We'll know on Sunday. We all hope that the cards fall right and the Fiesta Bowl is like, yep, BYU, we want you. Let's put you in a New Year's Six game. Now, if that is not the case and things don't fall into place, what does BYU want and need most in a bowl game that is not a New Year's Six scenario?
Well, you're always looking for the best competition. I think you guys alluded to this already. And sometimes you get good competition from unexpected places. You might find in some years a G5 with an undefeated record, for example, that ends up in your bowl. That's pretty good competition. I think that the Independence Bowl was hoping for that when they were targeting, BYU and UTSA. And of course, that undefeated component fell by the wayside. Ultimately, you want a place that your fans can get to, will want to get to, and you want the best possible competition to face. And yes, they're targeted for a certain place. They're hopeful for another place. And then there's that whole gray area in between of postseason destinations that may, require some wiggle room on behalf of networks and leagues and BYU to get something fun done there as well. So I guess I'm more intrigued than I am anxious about what's to happen. And of course, by the same token, you're also very hopeful that scoreboard watching might pay off this weekend because there's still a chance that that the New Year's Six discussion becomes a real thing on Sunday afternoon in that committee room if enough things break BYU's way. Now, last week wasn't a great week for things to break BYU's way, but there's one more week for games, to go the Cougars' way. And it'd be nice if a bowl simply had a preference, but they're kind of bound by protocol in which, the rankings kind of dictate where these at-large teams get slotted. So there has to be some movement for BYU to get what it's, what it and its supporters most want this weekend.
Greg, how surprised were you to hear on ESPN and moved all over Twitter yesterday that Bronco Mendenhall was going to retire or resign after the bowl game for Virginia, and all his staff and everybody appears to be out? The AD and the school president there in Virginia tried to keep him in, but he's not going to do it. How surprising was that for you?
A couple of weeks ago, Dave, I was with BYU women's soccer in Charlottesville, and BYU was practicing on one field and Broncos football team was practicing on the adjacent field. And after the soccer practice ended, I hung around and waited for Virginia's practice and their Thursday's hero presentation to wrap up. And I was able to chat with Bronco when I wasn't able to when he came to Provo because of the timing of our pregame movements. So we had a chat and we hadn't seen each other in 6 years, and it was fun to catch up. And during that time, he said a lot of really, deeply resonant things, and they really focused on the difference that he felt he was able to make in a place like Charlottesville and a program like Virginia. And now I look back at that conversation in retrospect, and I really do have a greater sense of the the feeling that he felt he had already done something that he wasn't able to do at other places in his career. And evidently, the decision came that sense was more of maybe satisfaction and completion. And he spoke during that conversation about challenge and opportunity and constantly wanting to be inspired and invigorated. And that's led him to this decision. And so in some ways, the timing might be surprising, but in a lot of ways, it's very much playing to type and who Bronco Mendenhall is at the core. Someone who's, forever curious and striving and yearning for the next great challenge or opportunity. And so in a lot of ways, it makes a great deal of sense. In a lot of ways, you wonder why and why now. And he'll coach one more game, of course, get through that bowl game. But clearly a unique and exceptional individual, a coach, leader. And we are all curious to see what his next challenge will be.
Very well said on Bronco Mendenhall. We are talking with Greg Wrubell. Before you go, Greg, let's spin that wheel of BYU sports one more time. And you brought up intrigue for the bowl scenario, for the Bronco Mendenhall situation. But I'm wondering if you're feeling anxiety about BYU men's basketball after Gavin Baxter so unfortunately went down with another season-ending injury, and now there's some real concern about the depth of the big man situation for Mark Pope's guys. What are you feeling around BYU basketball, and how do they shore up that situation as they get ready for a pretty good Missouri State team?
Yeah, very curious to see how the Cougars bounce back. And this is not an easy stretch into which BYU ventures right now. Nor has any part of the season been easy to this point. But you play at a good Ken Pom team on the road at Missouri State, another in-state game, and Justin Bean and the Aggies lurking next week. You travel to play Creighton. Another in-state game turns around with Weber on the back end, the tournament in Hawaii, all while you're trying to adjust to this, almost unfathomable personnel blow with Gavin Baxter going down for a third straight season-ending injury. You hope that the sickness that went through the team resolves itself. You get Gideon George back. You hope that at some point, Richard Howard makes a return to kind of shore up the inside, forces. But it's a tenuous time right now for BYU, having taken the mental gut punch beyond the actual, personnel impact of the Gavin Baxter injury. That injury kind of changed that game to an extent. And changes the short term as well for this team as they find out how to adjust as well. So it was I don't want to use the word devastating, but a really damaging night for BYU, from which they have to recover in a lot of different ways. And I guess I'm curious and intrigued to see how it is that Coach Pope and his guys rally at Missouri State, because I still think that in the regular season, BYU under Mark Pope has yet to suffer consecutive losses.
Right.
I think the only back-to-back losses came last year in the postseason with Gonzaga and UCLA. So I think they're still in a situation where in the regular year, they haven't had that, back-to-back loss situation. So let's see how they do respond, because it's been a real hallmark of their team in the past, is the ability to be resilient and bounce right back with a win after a tough L.
Yeah, those back-to-back losses against two Final Four teams are a little bit more understandable in a postseason scenario. But, man, another massive weekend for BYU sports, the third really in a row. Greg, have a great call tonight. We'll be dialed in, and hopefully we're rooting for BYU women's soccer on a national championship Monday.
Yeah, we'd love for this to get into the weekend. And, right now, the NCAA championship is scheduled for Sunday. It's a Friday-Sunday scenario, but they will move it to Friday-Monday if the Cougars get the result tonight. So we hope that there's a schedule change in the offing and that the Cougars get to spend the weekend here in the Bay Area. Spencer, Dave, great to be with you. Good to see you guys.
Great to talk to you, Greg. The man, the voice of the Cougars, Greg Wrubell in the Bay